All right, we are live on Sidney Breakfast Club after hours. Okay, so let me see how many folks we have. Oh gosh,
Thousands.
Sean, we're up to 32 billion. It's always higher. It keeps getting larger every time. That's
Very
amazing.
popular.
Very popular. Clearly, people are interested. Anyway, this is something that we have started to build upon the momentum of the previous meeting. It was a record attendance to listen to. There were four individuals. The three of them are online today, and Jen couldn't join us. And we were talking about leadership. I called it Leadership Insights 2026. Welcome to the broadcast, Lacey, Trisha, and Jessy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us again.
Welcome.
There have been folks who said, no, we don't want anything to do with this. And how could they not want to be part of this? But Sydney Breakfast Club, for those individuals not familiar with it, really is turning into a Lower Vancouver Island / Peninsula business incubator. This is where a lot of business is being talked about. It's a networking club. We try to learn about business. We try to learn about stuff. And we had a really great start to the year talking about leadership, which in my opinion means something different to every person I talk to. And so I would love to start off with really where you guys, how you define leadership. And let's start there. And because Lacey, you're on my left, at least in the box to my left, why don't we begin with you if that's okay?
Totally. Yep.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
I'll just introduce myself quickly. So I'm Lacey Sheardown, and I am the GM of a small business called MeetEdgar. And MeetEdgar is a scheduling and automation platform for social media. So I'm based here in Victoria, and I have a remote team all around the world. There's just 6 of us on MeetEdgar. So it's a bit of a different perspective from leadership in that it's a small remote team.
Small remote team, yeah, for sure.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm. And I think generally leadership to me, I've been really lucky to have some fantastic mentors in my time and people that I still look up to this day. And when I do things or say things, that person is in the back of my head, and I think, oh, that's what she would have said, or what he would have said. And I always think it's for me. I always say that I'm just the biggest cheerleader on the team. That's my job, is to support people, give them the fuel that they need, and then I get out of their way.
Hmm.
That's
That's
how I
so
view leadership, sort of. In a
that's so
nutshell.
remarkable. You know what part is maybe the most important? Getting out of the way. Oh my gosh. I cannot express to you enough how folks who think they're leaders don't get out of the way and let other people do their thing. Congratulations. Okay, we'll shift over. Trisha, what do you think? Or first of all, hi, introduce yourself.
Hi. So for those of you who are watching who don't know me, hi everyone, I'm Trisha Sterloff. I am a career and leadership coach. I focus on leaders who are typically in their early to mid-career stages, and they're looking to either get up and move up, get out and do something totally different, or really feel that they're having more impact right where they're at. And just to pick up on what you were saying, John, about getting out of the way, we were talking in a masterclass that I had last week around how to navigate leadership transitions, and that getting out of the way piece is so important when you have leaders who have moved up because they're so good at doing, and how to help leaders transition out of being the fantastic doer that you are to the person who actually leads the way and helps others shine, which I know Lacey does so well, especially with a remote team, because that has its own challenges.
Yeah, they're in fact many times the exact opposites. The great
Mhm.
doers are bad leaders.
Mhm. Well, and it depends why you want leadership. I think that's a really important piece too. Why do you want to be in a leadership position? Is it for the title, for the money, or is it because you really want to lead others and help others shine? You're going to end up with two very different types of leaders depending on what the motivation is. And so it's really around, helping to support people be the best leaders that they can so they keep their teams engaged.
Yeah, thank you. Jessy, Jessy's somebody I've recently met. Don't know a lot of your background. Both Lacey and Trisha I've known for a while. Quite fascinated to hear always from new folks that I'm not familiar with what their thoughts on these things that we hang around in. So tell us what you do and your perspectives on leadership.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back here. It's great to be a part of this again and to, get to talk a bit about leadership. So for me, leadership was this completely accidental thing that I walked into as a result of burnout a few years ago. I own a company called Victoria Digital Marketing. We do everything from web design, online marketing, but we also work we do print marketing and we do a lot of coaching for business owners as well, I'm finding. And as you can imagine, doing all that myself, it was a little too much. So leadership just wasn't actually a choice for me. It was kind of sink or swim. And my biggest philosophy when it comes to leadership is about being wrong. I love being wrong. Leadership to me is all about humility and actually being able to relate to your team, not from an elevated level, but actually placing yourself amongst them as well and hiring people that are a lot smarter than me.
Thank you. Thank you very Sean, how do we have any comments?
No. No, just
That's
my
because there's
own.
too many, right? There's too many people to write on. Yeah, I get that.
Right.
Here,
I'm
gonna challenge the three of you, challenge myself, in fact. There's been a huge debate around leadership, especially globally, internationally. Prime Minister Mark Carney has identified that we've actually reached a rupture in the way that our countries are talking with each other globally. Leadership is now beginning to look differently for different people and different cultures. Clearly, an American type leadership in general. I mean, there's 400 million people down there, so you can't say everyone's like that. But is now more do as I tell you. whereas there's another sort of middle power level of leadership of people going, no, let's work collaboratively together. At what stage do you find you have to balance that? Because at some point, leadership is moving a stalled organization. You got to move it to do something. Or circle talkers. They just talk in circles and never sort of get anywhere. How do you balance what are now clearly two definitions of leadership out there? Anyone can go for that.
Maybe I'll think out loud.
Yeah, let's do that. Right on.
Lacey and Jessy can jump in. I really like what Jessy said around having humility and knowing that you don't necessarily have all the answers all of the time. And that command and control way of leading, I think, has been tried and tested over centuries at this point. And there may be very specific times where you have to get a little bit like that, right? So emergency management, command and control structure works really well for that. But when you're working with an organization, it's a living, breathing thing. And you're bringing in people from different cultures, different generations. They all come with different ways of working and different expectations. And so my personal approach is you don't ever really need to get command and control. But if you do see things going sideways, people who talk in circles or whatever it may be, people who can't deliver for whatever reason, there's usually a root cause to that specific problem. And so getting curious and actually digging into that and being a coach, a mentor, and yes, a boss. There are things that are non-negotiables that have to get done. But I think coming at that as the one-off versus the command and control structure that really is proven out that it fractures things again, unless there are very specific things. Emergency management is a perfect example. You don't have time, you have to get something done. But I'd say the vast majority of our work is not that. And so it does take a more thoughtful approach to be able to turn things around without damaging the culture
Helen.
that you're trying to build.
Cool. Any other input?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, so my first job, my boss was very, do this now. I'm the boss. I'm bossing you around, and there's no way I could say no because I was 10 years old and it was my dad. So I hope we passed the statute on child labor laws, statute of limitations on child labor laws, but it was an interesting experience. I was very young, and it was very authoritative. It was, you do this now. And so that's kind of the atmosphere that I grew up in. We're really good friends today, and, he's chilled out a lot. But I think also for me too, like as a leader, we get stressed out. And one of the most important things for me is to not show that to the team because I don't want. And so what I learned from my dad actually was that if you're having like difficulties internally, sleep on it, sleep on a hard decision, sleep on your feelings. With our team, we are very varied people, and a lot of what you have to do as well to lead a team of people is that you have to become adaptive to everybody's personalities, to become adaptive to everybody's learning capabilities and skills and how they prefer to have feedback as well. And I'm very lucky that that's a skill that I definitely have. So I'm able to relate to each team member in a different way and provide different amounts of structure because everybody is so unique and individualized that's been really impactful for me.
Fascinating. Thank you.
That's great. I don't know that I have a lot more to add. Both of you made some really good points. I think the thing that I might add I think we've all had that boss that's been the bossy boss, and none of us want to be that. It's not great for team culture. No one enjoys working with someone like that. For me, the other piece I want to add is about getting buy-in. So I think a lot of like the team's motivation, if they feel like they're part of what you're growing and what your purpose is, you don't need to be a bossy boss. People are there doing it because they really want to and they care about it. And I love what Jessy said about, recognizing that you're not the smartest person in the room and you shouldn't be. You want to surround yourself with people who are experts in their own job and then let them do that. So, like Trisha said, if it's an emergency management, yeah, someone's got to come in and lay down the law and the steps. But in the course of everyday business, it's really collaborative and, just asking questions. And yeah, I don't have a lot to add other than the buy-in piece. Everyone's kind of touched on it. So
Thank you. Fascinating. Sean, you want to chirp in or I don't want to silence you because you're managing the millions of chat box there.
Yeah, I'm just distracted. I've been putting everybody's web address in and it's disappeared.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, we'll make
Anyway,
sure.
yeah, what I was going to comment is, yes, praise is incredibly individualistic. The amount of praise it's people want, and as leaders, we always have to be aware. Some people like it publicly in front of the whole team to say, hey, you did a fantastic job. Others want to be quiet. Yeah, you did well, and that's it. And knowing that makes a huge difference.
I find that true, Sean. And being typically an extrovert, I'd say I didn't catch on to it as early as I would have liked to, if I'm honest, because I think, telling everybody, hey, Joe did a great job today. Meanwhile, Joe's an introvert and wants to crawl under the table, and it's really important. Like Jessy said, I think she really captured it well. Understanding people's preferences is important, and it's a sign of respect to your teammates. And so I learned it early on and I never forgot it.
It even has an impact in brainstorming, for example. Any kind of team meeting, there's some people brilliant ideas won't say anything because it's in front of the group. So it can be hard to either coax that out or somehow have them contribute.
All right. We're going to go to the elephant in the room. I'm going to bring it up. Clearly, there are 3 business leaders. You're all young. You're all younger than me. I'm 67. I have a son who's 43.
You're
And I'm
67.
pretty sure you're all younger than all that. But you're also all women. And I think it's worth discussing that not in a misogynistic way, but in a strategic way. That are there differences in leadership styles and management between men and women? Do you find yourself defaulting to, well, that's a guy, and I kind of know how I'm going to deal with that person? I really hate that that would have to be the case, but I'm interested in your response.
I can't necessarily think of any differences. And it's interesting because I don't think that I really have a lot of communication or conversations within the community about leadership with other business owners that I can think of. So I don't really know if I lead the business in a different way than like men ever would. I do know that, in my industry, the last marketing agency that I worked for 2 men up in Kelowna, and they were fantastic. And they actually really kind of shaped the way that I built my business. They took me in, they put me through so much training. They showed me all their processes for managing, for bidding on projects, for client communication, for everything. So I'd say that, the female-led company that I've built is actually modeled after the one where I worked for these 2 incredible men. So maybe I do lead similarly that way. That was my inspiration.
Very cool.
Well, can I comment on something that I thought that kind of ties into your question from when we were at the Breakfast Club meeting? The 4 of us stood up there and talked about things that were maybe more like emotional and connection with our team. And we all talked about like vulnerability and transparency, and there was a lot of themes like that across the panel. Afterwards, one of the attendees came up to me and kind of noted that we hadn't really talked about like forecasting or, like the actual business stats and things like that. And I was like, well, for starters, that would have been a really boring panel.
Yeah.
Like we all do that stuff for our business, but it's just not really interesting to talk about. But I thought it was interesting, and I don't know if that's a female male lens at all. Like I'm not saying that, but it was a male attendee who said that to me. And I
Well,
thought,
it is. I can tell you
yeah,
it
like
is.
I just to me, I like I don't know. Maybe there's some more. I don't know. Maybe the bit of the emotional intelligence. I don't
Is
know.
much higher. Is much higher, in my opinion. Now I come from it, so there's also male, female, and young and old.
Mhm.
And so it depends on that matrix where you land. Male and old are going to fall into objective type discussions, determining metrics and KPIs and all that kind of crap. Now, Jesse's experience has been maybe young and male. That was perhaps more empathetic, more understanding, more humanity-based decision making, as opposed to, I'm going to just generically call it Excel-based decision making. For an older generation who are aging out. Thank God we're aging out. Because look, the mess it's got us into, globally, at least anyway. And I think on many levels, older males could learn so much about empathy and emotion and understanding. So I do think that female leadership coming from that sort of DNA place is better and more effective than male leadership. And that actually male leadership could be a component of a female leadership sort of a box of tools. Like there'll be these people do this, these people do that, but to have the overall leader be a female, we're long overdue. Long overdue. And I know we didn't bring it up before because it's not fair at sort of a community level to say that just because you're a female, you're going to be boxed into this way. But when you look at actually what's going on, there are strengths and weaknesses from both genders.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to be so careful though, because within each, there's outstanding people and people who aren't. I had a female leader who I can think of as an example of not what to do. I remember going into one of my first It was like an employee review thing, and I was terrified because she'd never given me any feedback. So I didn't know whether I was
Mm,
going in doing a great job or a bad job. And I kind of said that to her, like I was, nervous. She said, I think you look nervous or whatever. And I said, yeah, I am, because I don't know how I'm doing. And she said, oh, well, like if I don't say anything, it means you're doing a great job. And that was an example of someone who had no idea of what motivated me. I was at the time young and I didn't have a lot of confidence, and I needed some reassurance I was on the right track, because sometimes in business, even if you're doing a good job in your role, the numbers might not match too. Like it might be at the time this was a struggle in this business, and I was meant to be making sales, which I am a terrible salesperson, and I hated making sales calls, and they weren't coming together for me. But after that, I did feel like, okay, I'm doing a good job, but I just remember that, and I thought to myself, I am never ever going to do that to someone who I work with.
mm.
Like
Mhm.
you should know where you stand. There should be no meeting request that I ever send anyone where they feel terrified to meet with me.
Yeah.
You
Well
know,
done.
they're so,
Well done.
and that was a female leader.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I could jump in here too, because John and I have had some of these discussions offline, and I think there are a couple of things. Number one, I've noticed a huge difference in the workplace from when I started in 2003 in government here in British Columbia to now. There were women who would never even mention the fact that they had children. I mean, that was totally offsides. People didn't talk about their personal lives at all at work. It was keep work at work and home at home, which I think we all acknowledge now is a pipe dream for most people, because both affect the other. The other thing, though, I actually agree, in certain industries it's so much more male dominated than in other industries. I mean, and in the public sector you see more people on the social sector are female, more people in the natural resource sector are male. That's sort of just the way it's played out. But to pick up on what Lacey was saying, I actually started something in 2014 because I had had a couple of bad experiences, particularly with female leaders.
Mm,
And so I started
mm,
a group called, not creatively called, but Women Leading in Government. And my whole goal is to try and ensure that women start supporting each other in a better way. Because I think when I first started in government, there was a scarcity mindset around leadership positions for females. And so
mm,
it almost became, if I started climbing a ladder and that's where you wanted to go, you might have to pull me off the ladder to get up there. And I think
mm,
that
mm,
that's totally destructive. It's unnecessary. And I think that, whether we're talking male or female, I'd say all of us bring with us masculine and feminine energies.
mm.
And so it's how we use both of those and when we use those and apply those that really actually matter. And maybe women do have more accessibility to those feminine energies. But to Jessy's point, I've had wonderful mentors and bosses that were men, and wonderful mentors and bosses that were women, and equally bad ones on both sides.
Mm.
So I think
That's
it's really about making sure that you're using the energies that you have and getting to know the people that you're wanting to, lead.
managed. Yeah.
That matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I had yeah, echoing that, I actually kind of on the flip side of it, I had a really interesting experience when I brought on my project manager a few months ago, where she told me that she had worked for women before, and she found that working for women, they were a lot harder to work for and mean. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But it was also really interesting to have that very frank, kind of honest feedback from her right from the start, because then it's nice to have that backstory and to understand that, she'll probably require leadership in a completely different way, and that it is, worth it to be more empathetic. She's fantastic. I want to keep her around for forever. I want to make sure I'm leading her correctly.
This is fascinating. This is fun. Thank you. I'm learning stuff like every minute. We're at half an hour, and for at least, well, all of us understand that our digital audience is got a short attention span. And so why don't we wrap things up, if I may ask each of you to look into the future now, okay? A very, very uncertain future for our countries, our communities. There, I think, has to be some pretty dramatic change for us to survive economically, culturally, politically. I mean, I'm not being pessimistic. I just think that's where the world is at now, trying to understand how to fit together in a better way, in a more, yeah. And so maybe we end up by what do you think we should be doing? Or what kind of leadership attributes might we tell the community to think about doing more of in the future? How about that for an end question, eh? Should I have given that to you beforehand? Hey, Sean, you can speak to that if you want.
Or maybe how can we recognize traits in others and encourage or dissuade them too?
Yeah. Okay. Does somebody want to start, or is that not fair? Go ahead,
No,
Jessy.
I can go. Okay, so here's the thing about me is I'm actually like a total boomer millennial. There are definitely a lot more of my traits that are kind of boomer, but I think the general empathy and imperfectness and honesty of leadership is where I do fall into that very millennial kind of category where again, I don't want to be perfect. I want my team to know when I make mistakes. I want to be the person that they can come to and they're like, hey, you did this wrong. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Thank you for telling me. Because that's the only way that we can learn. I think that if you think you're done learning, you're just so far behind in
You're
life.
wrong.
You're wrong. You're absolutely thank you. You're wrong. You're never done learning as a leader or as a team member. And so for me, that's what I would recommend for leaders kind of moving forward is stop thinking you're perfect because you're not, and let your team teach you.
That's so cool.
Maybe I'm going to pick up on Jessy, what you were saying, if that's okay. I also think it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay right now that everything is uncertain and you're not going to have all the answers as a leader. And that's fine. And I think having conversations like we are right now and building community, John, like you do through Sidney Breakfast Club, and there are other places. Finding some more community is, as a leader, is great because you get different perspectives. And I know that it's so easy sometimes to just be narrowly focused on where you're at and what's going on. But broadening out your perspective, I think, can give you a little bit of innovative ideas, but I also think it can help ground you a little bit more in these uncertain times to know you're not in it all by yourself. And it's, again, okay that you don't know everything that's going to be coming up, and just communicate really clearly with your team about what you do know, what you don't know, and what you can and can't talk about, and open that bridge to your team because they're feeling it right now.
I love it. I'm going to feed off of that too.
Right?
I think what I wanted to talk about too is it kind of goes for me just being consistently honest and as transparent as I can be. And I think all of us are doing that. And I love how you said, it's okay to admit we don't know. And I think people would way rather hear that than some kind of BS answer anyways. And the thing, I think we have Brene Brown to thank for making this like more out there about being like bravely vulnerable. And I think that sometimes we've seen leaders who just, they have all the answers and they've got all the right things to say and they're using big fancy words, and it doesn't feel authentic and it doesn't help us connect with that person at all. I think this brave vulnerability as a leader helps you connect with your team, and it will help them feel valued in what you're doing, and your shared purpose will feel more real. So I think people have to have enough confidence actually to be vulnerable, because I think it's just ego and a mask that a lot of people put on when they have all the answers. And I don't believe it for a second. I'd way rather hear the mistakes and the what you don't know, because as Jessy said, no one knows it all. It's okay. Like, you just don't. If you think you do, well, then you're not someone I want to be at the table with, because I don't
You're
believe it
wrong.
for a second.
Exactly.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
This has been really, I did not expect that. This has been so enlightening. I've learned so much from you all. Thank you. And we will, this is being recorded, and we will distribute this to as many folks as I can. And I know that you'll share. I'm going to end the stream now. It takes about 3 or 4 seconds for that to happen. So don't start talking something you don't want the public to hear. So thank you all. Thanks to everyone who's listening. Thanks to everyone who's jumping on. Thanks to the 3 of you. And Sean, thank you very much for co-hosting. Till we meet again.
Yeah, and our thousands of listeners, stay tuned.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.